Hi, and welcome to Walchet Reviews, where we look at different products in the legal tech market and provide you our feedback on the same. In our very first episode, we're looking at DocuSieve, the proofreading tool by Mike Legal. Product introduction. The tool is a proofreading tool that allows you to review legal errors within the document, as well as review different touch points within the document for the purpose of ensuring that they're accurate. So what are the things it actually looks at? It looks at definitions, undefined terms, duplicate definitions, unused definitions, clause references, amounts and numbers, dates, placeholders, which is always a good last minute check before you email the document out, and punctuation and grammatical errors. Before we get into any of the features about the tool, let's take a quick look at the pricing, because I always feel that pricing is an important consideration before purchasing any legal tech product. As you can see, there are two methods of payment, monthly or annual, and the price is cheaper if you go for an annual option. Your per user price goes down as well when the number of users increase. So if you're looking at up to 10 users, then you're looking at a price of $304 per user per year, which is actually a fairly competitive price. And if you're more than 10 users, then even better, you can directly negotiate for enterprise pricing, which will be at a more competitive rate. What are the things I like about the tool? I have to start with the interface. I think it's a fantastic looking interface, very spiffy, very smart, very neat. Plugin in Microsoft Word, and I can just hover over here, take a quick tour of the product, and it'll tell me what each of these tabs do, and I can even click on each of these tabs and go to them in a little bit more detail. So I think it's very, very neatly designed. It's a pleasure to use. The second thing that I want to point out is definitions. I think this is important for any proofreading tool because it's possibly the most used feature. And I can, from an issue standpoint, identify which are my undefined terms, that is, terms that have been used in a capitalized manner but not necessarily defined. And I can actually look at the instances in which they have been used in the document, run through that exact portion. And if it's okay, like for instance, I'm not necessarily going to define an annexure, I can actually add to dictionary by clicking on add to dictionary over here, and that will get highlighted in that manner. I can also look at duplicate definitions, unused definitions, which is defined and then not used within the document, or any inconsistent definitions. The third thing that I really like about this tool is the clause referencing, because it seems to do a little bit of reading, and I'll show you what I mean through this example with the tag-along rights. So as you can see over here, I have cross-referenced the tag-along rights with clause 18, and it's telling me that this seems to be an incorrect clause reference. And if I move up, scroll up and actually look at what exactly is clause 18. Clause 18 is the tag-along right, but the most accurate clause reference would be 18.1 because I need to be really specific. So it's not only just looking at the clause reference, but it's also looking at the context in which it's used and recognizing that it needs to be tag-along right of investors and highlighting to me that clause 18 isn't the tag-along right of investors, it's just the tag-along. So it does seem to be doing a little bit of reading, which I really like. The last thing that I want to mention, actually not the last, the second last thing, and I think I might have pressed something else in the middle, but is the definition styles. So you'll often work on different documents where defined terms have a different format. And here I have the ability to set profiles. So I've got a corporate profile, and you can see that when the tool looks at the document, it will actually look at any term which is defined in these three manners and identify that as a defined term. I've also got a Walchet finance, which will identify anything that is in this format as a defined term. So, and I can just add my own profiles, and as and when I'm reviewing a document, switch and toggle between profiles. So I find that incredibly useful. And the last thing, which is really, really neat, is that all of the updates happen automatically. I don't need to restart my computer. I don't have to re-enter the product code. I don't have to do anything. In fact, I don't even always know when the product update happens. It just happens automatically, and I find that really, really neat. What are the things I think the tool could have done better? I'm going to start with false positives. I think false positives are challenging for any proofreading tool. What exactly is a false positive? We'll go back to that tag-along right of investors example. Now, in this instance, reference to clause 18 isn't exactly an incorrect reference. It's just a more generic reference. So if I'm really specific of my clause references, which I am, I would actually want to correct this, and this is actually an error, and I would want to say clause 18.1 because that is actually the tag-along right of the investors. But let's say I'm not as specific and I'm okay for it to refer to the generic tag-along clause. This is actually not an error because in the context of which it's used, I'm actually okay with it saying just clause 18. But the problem is this is continuously showing up as an error and I have no way of marking it as disregard and don't show up as an error anymore. And every time I run this check, it's going to show this as an error and it's going to add it to the list of items that I need to review from an error perspective. So I find that slightly challenging. If there was an easy way for me to just mark this as not to show up anymore, that would be very useful. They do have that option in undefined terms as we went through where you can actually add something to the dictionary, but they don't seem to have it for the other features. And that is something I think it would be very useful to have if they did have that feature. The second thing that I want to point out is that in this particular agreement, the definitions happen to be in a tabular format. So when the definition is inlined, there's absolutely no problem in it identifying the definition and also showing you the defined terms. But where the definition is in a tabular format, it's only identifying the defined term and it's unable to recognize the definition. Of course, most agreements, or rather many agreements, may not use the tabular format for the definition section, so it may be a moot point. But this agreement that I tested it on does, and I realized that this was something that I needed to point out. The last thing that I want to mention that I think it could do better is working on related documents. So often you find in a transaction, you may have a parent agreement and several ancillary or child agreements under that. So for example, in a financing transaction, your financing or your loan agreement is the parent agreement, and the ancillary documents are like your corporate guarantees, the pledge, the mortgage. All of those documents will not necessarily replicate all of the definitions in the main parent agreement. In fact, they will reference the definitions in the loan agreement and say any terms capitalized and used here but not defined will have the terms defined in the loan agreement. So if you're reviewing one of the ancillary documents in this tool, it's going to throw up a lot of false positives because it's not also referencing the terms and the definitions in the loan agreement. So I feel like if this had an option to also review related items, it would be a lot more accurate in eliminating more false positives. Though I do believe the team has received this feedback from some of its initial customers, and they are planning to include it in the product updates to come. So who is the target audience for this tool? I would primarily say transactional lawyers that work on contracts and agreements in any practice area. It could be general corporate, banking and finance, project finance, real estate, anyone that's working on an agreement, this would be useful. I also want to add that I think it will be useful if you're also working on an advisory related document like a memo or an opinion, because the definitions of spotting issues would be relevant in that instance as well. Final thoughts. I think this is a great product, especially considering it's not even a year old. It's also very competitively priced. So I would say it's more suited for small to medium-sized teams that are looking to start with a proofreading tool. That concludes our review of DocuSieve by Mike Legal. If you want to know any more information, please do write in at my email address, priyadarshini@walchet.com. You can write into asking for more information, more feedback, or even if you want us to review a different legal tech product, or you just want to say hi, we love to hear from you, so please do write in. And if you really like the tool and are thinking of going ahead and purchasing DocuSieve, do quote this coupon code WalchetDS. You will be then eligible for up to 2 months of free subscription. I want to clarify that Walchet does not earn any revenue from any sales made through this video, but any benefit that accrues from the coupon code is entirely for the benefit of this audience. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.